Hey, what's up everybody? This is Snicked back with another Royal Revolt 2 base review. In this installment we're going to be looking at the base that belongs to Akash Singh Rathod. Akash, hopefully I pronounced your name even somewhat correctly there. But in game, Akash is known as X-Addict X. He's a mid-level base right around 1600 on the global leaderboard, which pegs him at about 2700 trophies and change. And has a really cool base layout and a very cool base design that I'm excited to get into and to break apart here, analytically. That is, not I don't mean that to sound menacingly, Akash, but just to go ahead and break it apart here. Look at the layout itself, how the layout and the base is designed, and the wave composition that you're using, and the defensive structures as well. And then, as I had said, I like to present this information just as you would be looking at it. This is basically a longhand version of just the real quick analysis that any of us do when we're encountering a base for the first time. So it's kind of what to look for, and benefits to this layout, the weaknesses of it, and how the layout and the troop and the troop composition kind of complement one another. So basically how everything holds together, and really whether or not, Akash, you have what we would consider to be a viable strategy here for your defense in the game. And it's also good from the perspective of a raider when we go in and look at this, kind of to look at some of the telltale, hints and clues to see kind of who we're dealing with, and how well they've thought through their design, and how kind of a methodical of an approach that they've taken to putting everything together. So with that said, let's go ahead and have a look at the troop composition first off. So these are the icons that are in the upper right corner of the main body of the page here. So we have paladins first, and I have been a proponent of having paladins and melee DPS first or second. It doesn't have to be first, of course, but especially in the mid game, so at mid-level gameplay, because at this point the paladin is probably the most upgraded, most powerful, or at least the most durable unit type or troop type that most people have right around this stage in gameplay. So paladins have a lot of hit points, along with pyromancers. They're ultimately the tanks among the different troop types, and at this point, as I had said, because this is the third troop type that you unlock, and it's unlocked pretty early in the overall upgrade and the overall game progression, it's probably more upgraded than any one of these other troop types that Akash has here, at least at this point. I could be wrong, and of course this varies from player to player, depending on how you prioritize what. But in all likelihood, the paladins are probably on a relative strength basis. The paladins are probably the strongest option, and it's good to have a lot of them because, especially in mid-level gameplay, when Sword Rain is a spell that is so prevalent and is in such widespread use, there is a widespread tendency to get into Frosters and Pyromancers, Arblasters, and to really emphasize those ranged DPS unit types. But if the Sword Rain that a raider is bringing into your base is commensurate with, or is kind of higher than your upgrade regimen, or your upgrade progression for those different range DPS unit types, then the Sword Rain is going to be able to one-shot all of those different units, or all of those different troops. And if you don't have a mix there, the way that Akash does with some mortars and some paladins, especially knights not so much, because they can be taken out as well with the Sword Rain, and then cannons are just not a good option in general. So the knights and the mortars are a great idea to include here, and having knights out front is a good idea. Again, at the mid level, I think later on in the game, their utility and the benefit of having them around, at least in such strong supply, decreases. But at this point, Akash, it's good to see that you have that first. And then second, as I had mentioned, Pyromancer is also very powerful, and probably the most versatile unit type in the game overall. And so it's good to see those second. And then, on down the line with the range DPS. So there's a lot of range DPS representation here, which makes sense. especially given the design of the base itself. And then finally, we have frosters at the very end, and it looks like it's probably one froster per wave, which everybody knows who watches my videos, that in every video I bring this up and harp on it, because it really is a great idea to have at least one froster. It may be beneficial to have more. I'm actually researching that now to see whether there's any kind of a stacking effect or a multiplier on how much you can slow down the hero and the raiding party with multiple frosters. But even then, frosters are very weak in hit points. They don't really deal out any damage per se. It's really just the slow effect. And so it's good to have that one froster there to really slow down the overall progression of the raider going through your base. Looking at the defensive structures really quickly, because it's difficult to really comment a whole lot on this until we get into the base itself. But we have all blockades. I noticed no barricades. Those have already been kind of stowed away in storage, collecting dust. And so we have all blockades here, and it's good to see overall. I mean, there's some pros and cons to having maybe all blockades at this point. It does depend from player to player. You don't want to have all blockades too early. It's not a good idea to do something like, replace all your level 7 barricades that you have with level 1 blockades just because they're blockades. That kind of defeats the purpose of having an effective defense. So there is a transitional period where you move from barricades, which are the wooden types, over into blockades, just generally, and it looks like Akash has already done that. But the benefit, of course, to moving to blockades earlier rather than later is that you get the rather lengthy and rather expensive upgrade progression for your blockades started, because eventually you're going to have, if you don't have any spike pads or anything like that, you're going to have 11 fully upgraded blockades once your castle gate is fully upgraded. And so there's it takes a long time to get through them. It takes more than a week, and several million. I'm trying to remember what the level 12 is, but it's upwards of 5 million per upgrade, and it's upwards of 7 days, I believe, or it might be right around 7 days. The figures are escaping me at the moment, but it's very time consuming and very expensive for the blockade. So it's good to see that getting started now. And then moving on to the towers. Speaking of expensive and lengthy upgrades, we have Firebolt, Skull Towers, which are the two that you would fully expect to see, and you really have to have once you get into mid-level gameplay to continue to progress and to have an effective defense. And then Gargoyle Towers here as well, which is probably just a holdover. It is a useful tower in early gameplay, but really phases out quickly because of a lot of the limitations that are inherent to Gargoyle and Froster Towers, which we don't really need to belabor here. But anyway, so overall, we'll have a look a little bit more at how the towers are deployed. I do think that the spacing of the blockades, I can tell you from the map, is done really well. And so let's go ahead and just comment very briefly on the actual design itself, because looking at how everything fits together here, there are some opportunities for choke points with Firebolt Towers and Skull Towers. So especially kind of up right in the middle, there's the kind of the major point where the path overlaps, and there's a major choke point. If you're looking at the right side, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the fourth tower up there. There's that diagonal tower which shoots across down at the path and really can't be attacked except by using cannons, especially cannons, to a much lesser degree R-blasters. And so there's that, and then there's another tower that's down, and it's the very bottom tower. It's down and to the left. That's another tower that can't be attacked immediately. That can only be attacked by really long-range troops like the R blaster or the cannon. So there's a couple of instances here where, and I think there's even one there in the middle. So actually, Akash has a lot of instances here where he's utilizing choke points and barriers and parallel paths for his range DPS and for his towers to take full advantage. And so that's why I think that this design overall is really, really praiseworthy and is a really awesome design. It's something to be kind of studied and emulated if you're interested in looking at a different design, or you're looking for a design that uses a lot of range DPS, has a lot of choke points, has a lot of parallel paths. There's a lot of opportunity for crossfire between towers and whatnot. As we'll see here in a moment, Akash has done a really awesome job with this design. The one key drawback to this in mid-level gameplay, of course, is the ability to use sword rain to hit the troops, or to hit the waves. If the sword rain again is leveled higher and it's not commensurate with the level of the range DPS, you can really take out a lot of the waves, and a lot of the potency of the troops that are coming down out of the castle gate to defend the base, just with well-timed sword rains. And so that's always the Achilles heel, or the major downside of having a base with so many parallel paths. But again, you cluster everything so closely together that you can take advantage of a lot of crossfire from towers. So there's some give and take there. So anyway, let's go into the base itself, and we'll have a look at how all this plays out in practice. So what I will do is spawn, as I usually do, just spawn a couple of pyromancers, a couple of arblasters, and then I'm gonna start bringing out cannons, because as I had said, there's a lot of towers that I'm not able to reach, and so that's always important. Anytime you see you study a base closely and you see scenarios like this, it's something where you might want to consider bringing cannons along, because you will need them in order to get across these barriers. There's really no other way to do it. So you can see here we got a firebolt tower here. There's another firebolt tower over here. This is a great opportunity for range DPS, and you can see there's a lot of range DPS coming up. Pyromancers, mortars, and arblasters. Maybe too many. You can see that my cannon took that one out. Now moving on up here, and there's another one right over there. So there's another kind of little choke point here where we have a diagonally oriented tower that I can't hit except with long range DPS, which is kind of sluggishly bringing up over here. And here's another one. So there's all kinds of crossfire here, and all kinds of different opportunities for the towers to engage in a crossfire and deal out a lot of DPS. And that's why I think that this base design is a base design that could be carried into kind of higher level gameplay. Once your troops are built up to a point where sword rain doesn't become quite so much of a factor, and I'm actually about to die here. So once it's not quite so much of a factor, if these were level 9 skull towers, for example, it would be incredibly difficult to have gotten through there without scrolling. The troops wouldn't even matter. It would all be on the towers at that point. So from that point of view, all of the crossfire and all of the different opportunities for the towers to deal out just constant DPS with all of these firebolt towers is really impressive, and that is a factor that I really do like about Akash's base. So here we are at the very end. As is typical with a lot of bases, there's nothing up here at the castle gate, so there's nothing really to deter me from... There's my sword rain on the castle gate. There's nothing really to deter me from taking down the gate itself, and then of course the cannon comes up as a level 6 cannon and makes really short work of the gate itself. So anyway, Akash, just concluding comments here. Overall, as I've been kind of harping on throughout the video, it's a really great design. It's really well optimized, both I think for range DPS in as much as it can be, because you always run into a scenario there where when you have parallel paths and you have range DPS right across a barrier, the range that sword rain has, and then the range that arblasters, pyromancers, cannons, etc. have, is always going to be a little bit of a liability. So you don't want too much you don't want too much path overlap, but there are lots of good points where the path meets here, and lots of good choke points. And then the placement of your firebolt towers, and how there's just a firebolt tower around every turn that's attacking you, and you go up and you're kind of almost using your skull towers as like, well, maybe this wasn't your intent, but you can use your skull tower, which ultimately has more hit points and is more durable than the firebolt towers, almost as like a tank of towers, and then you can position firebolt towers around that can attack, that are dealing out most of the DPS as the defender, or as the attacker is trying to take down the tower. So anyway, overall that's great. Great base design overall. I think that the wave composition is good as well. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.